I never thought a simple Tuesday afternoon would shatter everything I believed about my marriage. My name is Ethan Callahan, and at 44 I've spent most of my life as a furniture craftsman in Twin Falls, Idaho. That day, I headed home early after a last-minute order cancellation at the shop. The drive back was quiet, the kind of quiet that lets your mind wander to the good things, like surprising Lindsay with an early dinner or just sitting together on the porch watching the sunset over the Snake River Canyon. Our house was a modest 2-story on the edge of town, nothing fancy, but it was ours. We'd bought it right after our wedding, scraping together every penny from my woodworking gigs and her part-time job at the local library. 15 years later, it still smelled like pine from my workshop in the garage. I pulled into the driveway, noticing her car was there. Maybe she was taking a break from her yoga classes she'd been so into lately. I grabbed my toolbox from the truck bed, thinking I'd fix that creaky step on the back porch while I was home early. The front door creaked open, and the house felt unusually still. No music playing, no clatter from the kitchen, just the faint scent of cooled coffee lingering in the air. I set my keys down quietly, hoping to sneak up and wrap my arms around her like I used to. But as I stepped toward the living room, her voice stopped me cold. It was low intimate, like she was sharing a secret, and she was on the phone. "I can't stand him anymore, Sarah," Lindsay said, her tone sharp and weary. 15 years of living like the wife of a ghost. I froze in the hallway, my heart pounding. Sarah, her best friend from high school, the one who lived across town. I leaned against the wall, not breathing, as Lindsay continued. "You're being harsh, Lynn." Sarah's voice crackled faintly through the speaker. "No, I'm serious. Even the way he breathes irritates me. 15 years, and what do I have to show for it? This tiny house that old truck he uses for deliveries? No kids, nothing." My chest tightened like a vice. No kids. We tried for years doctor's treatments, the endless cycle of hope and heartbreak. It turned out the issue was with her fertility, not mine. But I'd never blamed her, never once. "We're a team," I'd say, holding her through the tears. "It's not your fault." I'd stood by her, worked extra hours to cover the bills, even built a nursery we never used just in case. And now she was throwing it back like it was my failure. She laughed, a bitter, cutting sound that echoed off the walls. "He puts me first like some loyal puppy, but my heart, it's with Colton now. He treats me like a queen, makes me feel alive." Colton, the pharmaceutical rep who'd moved into the neighborhood a few months back, always flashing that charming smile, sending her complimentary samples from his job. I'd seen the way he looked at her when we'd run into him at the grocery store too long, too familiar. And now this. My wife, the woman I'd vowed to love through everything, was confessing her affair like it was nothing. "I wish Ethan would just disappear," she whispered, her voice dropping even lower. "Out of my life, out of existence. No divorce, no splitting assets, just gone forever." The words hit me like a hammer to the chest. Disappear! After everything, the late nights I'd spent in the garage crafting tables and chairs to keep us afloat, the way I'd held her hand through every failed pregnancy test, the quiet mornings where we'd sip coffee and dream about a future that never came. She wanted me erased. I didn't burst in. I didn't shout or cry. Instead, I pulled out my phone, my hand steady despite the storm inside me, and hit record. Every word, every laugh captured in crystal clarity. As the call ended with her giggling about some weekend plan, I slipped the phone back into my pocket. If she wanted me to disappear, she'd get her wish, but not on her terms. Not without leaving her to face the emptiness she'd created. I turned quietly and stepped back out the door, my mind already shifting from hurt to resolve. The man she called a ghost was about to vanish and take the life she'd taken for granted with him. For the next 3 weeks, I lived as if that phone call had never happened. Every morning I'd rise before dawn, the Idaho chill seeping through the cracks in our old windows, and head straight to the kitchen. I'd grind the beans fresh just the way Lindsay liked, strong and black with a hint of cinnamon, and set her mug on the counter with a quiet clink. She'd shuffle in later, her hair tousled from sleep, and I'd smile, handing it over like nothing had changed. "Good morning, love," I'd say, planting a kiss on her forehead. She'd mumble a thanks, her eyes already drifting to her phone, but I didn't let it show how much it stung. Inside, the recording burned in my pocket like a live wire, but on the surface I was the same devoted husband she'd mocked as a loyal puppy. Those weeks were a careful dance of normalcy, each step masking the storm I was brewing. I went to my workshop every day, sanding oak tables and carving custom chairs for clients, the rhythmic scrape of tools drowning out the echo of her words. But in the quiet moments, lunch breaks, drives home, I pieced together my escape. First, I called my brother Caleb. He was in Boise, a real estate broker who'd always had my back since we were kids scraping by after Dad left. I dialed him from the truck one afternoon, pulling over on a dusty side road to avoid prying ears. "Caleb, it's Ethan," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Bro, what's up? You sound off." I took a breath. "I need you to sell the house, fast. Cash buyer, no listings, no fuss." There was a pause, the kind that said he knew something was wrong but wouldn't push. When, 3 weeks, and keep it quiet, Lindsay can't know. He didn't ask why. "Got it, I'll handle the paperwork. You okay?" "I'll be fine." I lied, hanging up before the crack in my voice gave me away. Caleb was good at what he did. By the end of the week, he'd lined up a discreet buyer, a developer looking for quick flips. The house wasn't much on paper, but it was equity I'd built over years of overtime. I'd sign it over, pocket the cash, and reroute it where she couldn't touch. Next was the legal side. I reached out to Margaret Reese, an old friend who'd become a divorce lawyer in Montana after her own messy split. I'd helped her through it years ago, lending money when her ex cleaned her out. Now it was my turn to call in the favor. I emailed her the recording that night, attaching it with a simple subject, "Need your help." Her reply came fast. "Send details, I'll review and call." We spoke the next day, her voice calm and professional over the line. "Ethan, this is solid evidence, adultery, admission, emotional abuse. We can file quietly. What do you want?" "Everything protected," I said. "She gets nothing. Prep the papers, but hold until I say." Margaret didn't judge. "I'll draft the divorce petition, assets." I listed them, the savings I'd squirreled away from my craftsmanship, the copyrights on my custom furniture designs that had started selling online, the tools inherited from Grandpa. She advised setting up a family LLC, Reese and Callahan, to shield it all. By week's end, I'd transferred everything, bank accounts, rerouted to a new one in Montana deeds, signed over even the truck titled to the company. It was all legal, airtight, and invisible to Lindsay. Meanwhile, she floated through our days like I was already a ghost. She'd come home later each evening blaming advanced yoga sessions that left her glowing and distant. I'd nod, serve dinner, maybe the stew she'd always liked, and watch her pick at it while scrolling her phone. One night, she breezed in wearing a new dress short and fitted with a scent of perfume I'd never bought her. "How was class?" I'd ask, forcing a smile. "Exhausting, but worth it," she'd reply, her eyes avoiding mine. I didn't confront her. Instead, I documented every gift she earned from those classes, a diamond bracelet one week, a shiny ring the next. I snapped photos when she wasn't looking, noting dates and details in a private folder labeled evidence. That bracelet. She claimed it was a VIP perk from the studio. I emailed the pics to Margaret. Possible adultery proceeds traceable. Her response, noted. We'll use it. The charade peaked one evening when she twirled in, flashing the bracelet under the kitchen light. "Look what I got today, teacher's appreciation for dedicated students." "It's beautiful," I said, my voice even. "You deserve it." But that night, as she slept, I forwarded the image, adding, "More proof." I chose my exit day carefully, Friday, 3 weeks out. Lindsay had mentioned a full-day yoga retreat code for her getaway to Colton's cabin up in the hills, I suspected. I'd pack while she was gone, 12 boxes for my clothes, books, and essentials. The heirloom tool set from Grandpa chisels worn smooth from generations went in last, a reminder of what truly mattered. On the kitchen table, I'd leave a gold envelope, the signed divorce papers, a USB with the recording, and my handwritten note, "You wished I'd disappear. Live with that wish for the rest of your life." As the days ticked down, I felt a strange peace settle in. No rage, just resolve. I'd vanish on my terms, leaving her the echo of her own cruelty. On that final Thursday night, as she kissed me goodbye with lips that tasted like lies, I whispered, "Have a good retreat." Then, alone in the empty house, I started packing. By dawn Friday, I was gone, the door clicking shut behind me like the end of a chapter I no longer wanted to read. I can only imagine what happened that Friday evening when Lindsay finally returned from her yoga retreat. 2 days up in the hills at Colton's cabin, no doubt wrapped in his arms, whispering promises of a new life without the ghost she'd married. She'd drive back in her sedan, the one I'd tuned up just last month, her hair windswept from the open windows, a satisfied glow on her face. The kind of glow that comes from stolen moments from believing she'd finally escaped the mundane routine we'd built together. She'd pull into the driveway, humming some tune from the radio, maybe checking her reflection in the rearview mirror to fix that red lipstick she'd started wearing more often. The key would turn in the lock, the door swinging open with its familiar squeak, one I'd meant to oil but never got around to. She'd step inside, kicking off her shoes by the entryway, calling out my name absent-mindedly. "Ethan, you home early?" But silence would greet her thick and unnatural. The house, our house, would feel wrong from the first breath. No scent of dinner simmering, no tools clanging from the garage, just emptiness. She'd flip on the light in the living room, and that's when the reality would hit. The hand-carved oak coffee table I'd made for our 10th anniversary gone. The framed photo from our wedding, the one where she laughed in my arms under the Idaho stars, missing from the mantel. The bookshelf half empty now, with my dog-eared novels and woodworking manuals vanished. Her footsteps would quicken as she moved to the bedroom, heart probably starting to race. Our closet, my side stripped bare hangers swinging empty. The dresser drawers I'd claimed pulled out and left ajar, devoid of my flannels and jeans. By then, panic would set in. She'd rush to the kitchen, the heart of our home, where we'd shared so many quiet evenings. And there on the scarred wooden table, I'd refinished myself, sat the gold envelope. Gleaming under the overhead light next to the house keys I'd duplicated and left behind. Her hands would tremble as she picked it up, perhaps whispering my name like a question. "Ethan, what is this?" Tearing it open, the papers would spill out first the divorce petition, neatly signed in my steady handwriting, stamped by Margaret's office in Montana. She'd scan the lines, her eyes widening at the words, irreconcilable differences, adultery cited with evidence attached. Then the USB drive, small and innocuous, tumbling onto the table. She'd plug it into her laptop right there, fingers fumbling, and hit play. Her own voice would fill the room, that damning conversation with Sarah echoing off the bare walls. "I can't stand him anymore. I wish Ethan would just disappear." Every word, every laugh, preserved forever. Proof of her betrayal, her disdain, her affair with Colton. The list of assets would come next, a cold inventory of everything transferred, protected under the LLC. Savings accounts, redirected furniture copyrights, filed the house sale pending with proceeds untouchable. And finally my note. "You said you couldn't bear my presence, even my breathing. From today you won't have to. I didn't need to win, I just needed to disappear exactly as you wished." She'd collapse, then I picture it clearly, sliding down to the linoleum floor, back against the cabinets, clutching the papers to her chest. Sobs racking her body, the kind that come from deep regret mixed with shock. "No. Ethan, no." She'd gasp, tears smearing her makeup, the red lipstick, now a cruel reminder of her weekend escape. Her mind would race. How, when? But the answers were in her hands, my quiet efficiency, my unseen preparations. In desperation, she'd grab her phone, dialing my number with shaking fingers, but it would ring to voicemail, the line already disconnected, forwarded to nowhere. Emails bounced back, address invalid. Social media, my simple profile, the one with pictures of my woodwork and our rare outings, deleted as if I'd never existed online. She'd search frantically, "Ethan Callahan, Twin Falls," nothing recent, no traces. The man she'd wished away had obliged, erasing himself from her world. By then, the house would feel like a tomb, every empty space a accusation. She'd stagger to her feet, pacing, calling Sarah next. "He knows everything. He's gone." But Sarah, having heard the recording, perhaps through some forwarded clip from Margaret's prep, might hesitate. "Lynn, what did you expect?" The conversation would turn cold, friendships fracturing under the weight of her secrets exposed. As night fell, the reality would sink deeper. No more shared meals, no more my quiet support through her tough days. Just her alone in a half-empty home that suddenly felt too big, too silent. She'd curl up on the couch, one of the few pieces I'd left behind, and cry until exhaustion took her. But sleep wouldn't come easy. haunted by the echo of her own words. The storm I'd left wasn't thunder and rain, it was the vacuum of absence, the price of her wish granted. And in that moment, she'd begin to understand wishing someone gone doesn't erase the hole they leave behind. 3 days after my disappearance, Lindsay must have pieced together enough fragments of her shattered world to seek solace in the one place she thought was safe, Colton's doorstep. I can see it unfolding in my mind's eye, the way she'd drive through Twin Falls, her hands white-knuckled on the wheel sunglasses, hiding the red rims of her eyes from crying through the night. She'd pull up to his neat suburban house, the one with the manicured lawn and the shiny SUV in the drive, rehearsing her pleas. "Colton Ethan knows everything. He's gone vanished. I need you, now more than ever." He'd open the door, probably in one of those crisp white shirts he favored unbuttoned at the collar, like he was always ready for a casual fling. But there'd be no welcoming smile, no arms pulling her in. Instead, he'd lean against the frame, arms crossed, his expression shifting from surprise to calculated detachment. "Lindsay, what are you doing here?" She'd spill it all, the empty house, the divorce papers, the recording that exposed her every cruel word. "He left me with nothing. But you said you loved me, that we'd build a life together once he was out of the picture." Her voice would crack, desperate for the reassurance he'd whispered during their stolen afternoons. Colton would glance over his shoulder, perhaps hearing his own life stirring inside, maybe a fiancé or just the echo of his comfortable routine. "Look, what we had was fun, intense even. But it was never meant to be more than that. You were married, remember? This was escapism." Her face would crumple. "You said you loved me. You promised." He'd cut her off with a sigh, the kind that dismisses without effort. "I love the idea of you, the excitement, the secrecy. But now, you're a mess, Lindsay. No house, no money, and a divorce hanging over you. I can't get tangled in that. I've got my own life, my career. Hell, I'm getting married next year. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The words would hit her like a slap. "Married, you were using me. Not using, enjoying. But yeah, it's over. Don't come around again. It'll just complicate things." He'd close the door softly, leaving her on the porch, the click of the lock final as a slammed gate. Stunned, she'd stand there, the Idaho wind whipping through her hair before stumbling back to her car. The drive home, or what was left of it, would be a blur of tears and rage. How could he? After all the whispers, the gifts, the nights she'd risked everything for him, but deep down she'd know Colton had only wanted the thrill, not the wreckage. The fallout wouldn't stop there. Back in the half-empty house, she'd reach out to her friends, starting with Sarah. A frantic call. "Sarah, it's all falling apart. Ethan left. Colton's done with me. Please, I need to talk." But Sarah, who'd been on that damning phone call, would hesitate. "Lynn, I heard the recording. Margaret sent a copy as part of the legal notice. What you said about Ethan, it was cruel. I love you, but I can't be part of this mess. Take care of yourself." Click. One by one, the others would follow. Riley, her yoga buddy. "I'm sorry, but my husband doesn't want me involved. Good luck." Text ignored calls unanswered. The social circle she'd cultivated, built on brunches and superficial chats, crumbled like dry leaves. Whispers would spread through town. "Did you hear about Lindsay cheated on Ethan, wished him gone, and now he's actually vanished?" The judgment would sting, isolating her further. With no one left, she'd pack what remained into boxes, the house echoing with her solitude. The sale was already in motion. Caleb had texted me confirmation from Boise. Closed deal. Funds wired to Montana account. She'd end up in a cramped apartment on the outskirts of Boise, a rental she could barely afford on her sporadic library shifts. The place would smell of stale carpet and distant cooking, shared walls thin enough to hear neighbors' arguments. Nights alone, scrolling through her phone, searching for any trace of me. Ethan Callahan location. Pages of old woodworking ads, nothing current. One evening, buried in despair, she'd stumble on a local Montana news clip online. Mountain craftsman rebuilds life in Cody. There I'd be in the thumbnail beard, a bit longer standing before a rustic cabin I'd turned into a small eatery and workshop. The article would quote me, "I once lived for someone who saw me as invisible. Now I live for every nail I drive into wood, every meal I serve to folks who appreciate warmth." She'd stare at the screen, tears welling, realizing the man she'd discarded had found peace without her. But even that lead would feel futile. Montana was vast, and I'd made sure my tracks were faint. As the weeks blurred into isolation, the weight of her choices would press down. No more stolen glances with Colton, no supportive calls from Sarah, no home to return to. Just her in a dim apartment facing the storm I'd left not of anger, but of absence. The silence she'd wished for had become her prison, every empty moment a reminder that some wishes once granted can't be undone. 6 months had passed since I drove out of Twin Falls under the cover of dawn, the Idaho horizon, swallowing my old life in the rearview mirror. Now in Cody, Montana, I'd carved out something new, a small woodworking shop attached to a cozy vegan eatery nestled among the pines. I rose at 5 a.m. every day, the crisp mountain air filling my lungs as I pedaled my bike through the forest trails to the shop. By sunrise, I'd fire up the stove chopping fresh veggies for the day's special stews and salads that drew in locals and hikers alike. Afternoons were for crafting sanding tables, inlaying designs with the tools Grandpa had passed down. Evenings, I'd strum a guitar I'd picked up at a flea market, the notes mingling with the crackle of the wood stove. It wasn't luxury, but it was peace. No more pretending, no more echoes of betrayal. The locals knew me as the quiet craftsman who turned an old cabin into a community spot. They'd stop by for coffee, sharing stories, and I'd listen, nodding, feeling the weight of my past lighten with each genuine conversation. One crisp autumn morning, a letter arrived from Margaret, forwarded from her office. I slid it open over my morning brew, recognizing her precise handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a note from Lindsay, her first and only attempt at contact. "Ethan, I'm sorry for everything, the pain I caused." The words I said. "I've signed all the papers, no claims, no alimony. Just live well." Margaret had added a postscript. "She's got nothing left, no fixed address, no fight in her." I stared at the words, feeling a distant ache, not hate, not even pity, just the faint scar of what once was. I folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer with the others I'd never send, and went back to my lathe. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give. She'd forfeited that long ago. That long. Lindsay, from what I'd pieced together through scattered updates, had faded into the shadows of Boise. She worked part-time as a waitress at a dingy bakery, slinging coffee and pastries to indifferent customers. Her apartment was a shared rental with a young roommate, walls thin enough to hear the city's hum all night. No more yoga retreats, no glittering gifts from lovers. Colton had vanished from her life like smoke, and her friends had followed suit, their sympathies exhausted by her secrets. One night, scrolling aimlessly on her phone, perhaps seeking distraction from the loneliness, she'd stumble upon a video ad for my eatery. There, I'd be smiling in the kitchen apron, dusted with flour, explaining a recipe to the camera. The warmth of the wood-fired oven lighting my face, the forest backdrop framing it all. She'd watch, breath catching, then set the phone face down with a sigh, the screen's glow fading in her dim room. I didn't hate her. That fire had burned out miles ago on the road to Montana. Instead, I lived for the small things, the scent of fresh sawn pine, the strum of strings under my fingers, the gratitude in a customer's eyes. She wished me gone, and I obliged. But what vanished wasn't me. It was everything she'd held, love, trust, the chance to start over. In the silence she'd craved, she found her storm. And I found the quiet I'd earned.